So that's it then? 9 years, and I'm just gone? My voice didn't crack. That's what bothers me most when I replay that moment in my head. I should have screamed or cried or flipped his stupid ergonomic desk chair. Instead, I sat there, spine straight, face blank, like I was discussing the weather instead of having my life bulldozed. Vincent didn't even look up from his watch. A Breitling Navitimer. I know because I'd helped his predecessor, my mentor Warren, select it as a company milestone gift 3 years earlier. Mallory, your specialized position simply doesn't align with our new organizational structure. The board and I have determined that a strategic realignment. Save the corporate eulogy, I said, standing up. I get it. I'm Mallory Vega, 37, and until 8:45, that Tuesday morning, I was the lead systems architect at Helios Dynamic Solutions. Before I continue, if you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and don't forget to subscribe. This story gets complicated, and you won't want to miss how it ends. I walked out of Vincent's office without another word. No desperate pleas about my mortgage or my son's therapy bills. No reminders of how I'd solved the unsolvable Kyoto server crisis that saved the company $14 million. No mention of the 3 patents with my name on them that Helios still profits from daily. 9 years of loyalty. 9 years of missed birthdays, working holidays, and 3 a.m. emergency calls. 9 years of being the person they called when everyone else had failed. All erased with a strategic realignment. I cleared out my desk while my former teammates pretended to be busy. Only Imani, my closest work friend, dared approach. "This is bullshit, Mal," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the security guard hovering nearby. "Vincent's been here 3 months and he's cutting the people who built this place. Everyone knows it's just to bring in his cronies from Axelon." I carefully wrapped the small jade elephant my son Elliot had given me for luck. "It's fine. Really." "It's not fine. You're the only one who understands the Prometheus architecture. They can't just—" "Apparently they can," I said, tucking my laptop into my bag. "Look, I need you to do me a favor. The Chamber's proposal is due Friday. The encryption protocols need—" "Screw their proposal," Imani interrupted. "They just fired you." I zipped my bag closed. 9 years, Imani. I built systems that keep people safe. I'm not going to let them fail just because Vincent is an idiot. She hugged me fiercely. "You're a better person than I am." I wasn't. I just couldn't process what was happening yet. At home, I sat in my car for 43 minutes, staring at the peeling paint on our garage door. Elliot would be at school for hours. My husband Marco was at a construction site 2 hours away. The house would be empty, and somehow that felt unbearable. I finally went inside when Mrs. Abernathy next door started watching me through her curtains. I made coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop to update my resume, but just stared at the cursor, blinking on the screen. 9 years. I joined Helios when it was a scrappy startup with 20 employees and bugs in the ceiling vents. Warren had taken a chance on me despite my unconventional background, half computer science degree, half self-taught because I'd solved a system integration problem during my interview that had stumped their entire team for weeks. "You think differently," he'd told me. "We need that." Over the years, I became the company's secret weapon. While the developers built standard solutions, I created the impossible ones. The security patches no one else could conceptualize. The integration frameworks that made incompatible systems sing together. The algorithms that could predict system failures before they happened. I wasn't just good at my job, I was irreplaceable. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed. "Marco." "Hey babe, how's your day going?" The normalcy of his question made me laugh. A strange, hollow sound. "I got fired." Silence. Then, "What?" Vincent eliminated my position. Called it strategic realignment. More silence. "That pretentious asshole in the Italian suits? The one who kept mispronouncing your name at the company picnic?" "That's the one." "I'm coming home." "No," I said quickly. "Finish your day. We'll need the hours now." After reassuring Marco I wasn't about to drive off a cliff, I hung up and finally let myself cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, snotty sobs that made my chest hurt and my eyes swell. 9 years of my life. 9 years of my brain, my ideas, my solutions. When the crying jag passed, I did what any self-respecting professional would do. I stalked Vincent Daltrey online. Harvard MBA, 5 companies in 10 years. Each stint just long enough to implement transformational restructuring and claim credit for subsequent stock bumps before moving to the next victim. Helios was just another stepping stone for him, and I was just collateral damage. I was still scrolling through his insufferable LinkedIn posts when an email notification appeared. From Bernard Chambers. Subject: urgent, contract, opportunity, confidential. My first thought was spam. But Bernard Chambers was real, the founder of Chambers Technologies, one of Helios's biggest potential clients. The same client whose proposal I'd reminded Imani about. I opened it. Ms. Vega, I understand you are no longer with Helios Dynamic Solutions as of today. I would like to discuss an urgent contracting opportunity that requires your specific expertise. This matter is time-sensitive and confidential. Please call my private line at your earliest convenience. Regards, Bernard Chambers. I stared at the email for a full minute. How did he even know I'd been let go? The timing was suspicious. I called the number. Mallory Vega. A deep voice answered immediately. Thank you for calling so promptly. Mr. Chambers, I said, trying to sound professional despite my puffy eyes and runny nose. How did you know about my employment status? A brief chuckle. News travels quickly in certain circles. Vincent Daltrey has been making quite a stir with his realignments. I see. I'll be direct, Ms. Vega. Chambers Technologies is preparing to award a major security infrastructure contract. Helios is one of 3 finalists. Yes, I'm aware. I was leading the technical aspects of the proposal until this morning. That's precisely why I'm calling. The proposals we've received from all candidates have been inadequate. My technical team informs me that only your preliminary architecture design showed true understanding of our needs. I leaned back against my kitchen counter. So you want me to help you evaluate Helios's proposal? No, Miss Vega. I want you to complete it, but as an independent contractor for Chambers directly. We'll pay you 4 times your Helios salary for 2 months of work. My mouth went dry. That's substantial. We value expertise, and time is of the essence. Mr. Chambers, I'm not sure I understand. You want me to design the system that you are going to hire a vendor to build? Not exactly, he said. I want you to design it, and then we'll select the right vendor to implement it. Perhaps Helios, perhaps not. But the design will be yours, and ours. The implications hit me. Chambers would own my design. If they chose another vendor, Helios would lose the contract worth millions. Isn't this a conflict of interest? I signed non-competes. Our legal team has reviewed your standard Helios employment contract. Your non-compete prevents you from working for direct competitors, which we are not. It also prevents sharing proprietary information, which you won't be doing. You'll be creating new intellectual property for Chambers. He'd done his homework. Still, something felt off. Why me specifically, Mr. Chambers? Helios has other talented architects. A pause. Ms. Vega, do you know why we approached Helios originally? Our industry reputation? You. Specifically you. Your work on the Prometheus framework is exactly what we need. When I learned Helios had let you go, I realized we had an opportunity to work with you directly. My heart pounded. I need time to think about this. Of course, but please note our deadline remains unchanged. I'll need your decision by tomorrow noon. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, mind racing. The offer was incredible. Financially, it would erase the panic of unemployment. Professionally, it would be a high-profile project. But it would also be a direct blow to Helios. Without me, their proposal would be mediocre at best. Without this contract, their quarterly projections would tank projections that Vincent had undoubtedly promised the board. The petty part of me loved the idea. But something still nagged. The timing. Chambers reaching out hours after my firing? It felt coordinated. I called Imani. Did you tell Chambers I was fired? What? No? She sounded genuinely shocked. Why would they care? Bernard Chambers just offered me a contract to design their security system independently. Holy shit, she whispered. Mal, wait, have you checked your company email? I can't access it anymore. Vincent called an emergency meeting an hour ago. He looked like he was going to vomit. Something about Chambers putting their contract decision on hold. I felt a chill. Did he say why? No, but he's been locked in his office with the board on a call ever since. After hanging up, I paced my living room, puzzle pieces clicking together. Chambers had known about my firing immediately. Vincent was panicking about the Chambers contract. The timing wasn't coincidental. I opened my laptop again and searched for connections between Bernard Chambers and Vincent Daltrey. Nothing obvious in public records. But then I found a Bloomberg article from last year about Vincent's previous company, Axelon. Chambers Technologies withdrew from acquisition talks with Axelon Systems yesterday, citing irreconcilable differences in corporate culture. Sources close to the negotiations suggest Chambers' concerns centered around Axelon's aggressive cost-cutting measures under CEO Vincent Daltrey. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just about hiring me for my expertise. This was Bernard Chambers sending Vincent Daltrey a message. I was being used as a pawn in a corporate chess match. The question was, did I care? I thought about Vincent checking his watch while dismantling my career. About 9 years of dedicated work dismissed in a 15-minute meeting. About how he couldn't even bother to learn how to pronounce my name correctly. No, I didn't care. In fact, I was beginning to see an opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Vega, Vincent Daltrey here. There seems to have been a misunderstanding this morning. Please call me at your convenience to discuss. I laughed out loud. The desperation was palpable even in text form. Another text came through moments later. We're prepared to offer you your position back with a significant compensation adjustment. Too late, Vincent. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier holding a package. Delivery for Mallory Vega. Inside was a sleek laptop with a Chambers Technologies logo and a handwritten note from Bernard. For your consideration, contract papers enclosed. The laptop is yours, regardless of your decision. The contract was simple but generous. 4 times my salary. Full ownership of my designs credited to me but licensed to Chambers. Freedom to work from home. And a clause that specifically allowed me to accept other work afterward, including from Helios if I chose. Bernard was giving me leverage. My phone rang again. Vincent. I let it go to voicemail. I spent the afternoon reviewing the contract and researching what had happened at Vincent's previous companies. The pattern was clear. He came in, fired experienced specialists to cut costs, brought in his own people, claimed credit for short-term financial improvements, then moved on before the long-term damage became apparent. Elliot came home from school at 3:30, dropping his backpack by the door. Mom, why are you home? My brilliant, observant 12-year-old with his father's warm brown eyes and my stubborn chin. I'm working from home today, I said, not ready to tell him everything. He studied my face. You've been crying. Just allergies. He didn't believe me, but he let it go. Can we have pizza for dinner? Sure, buddy. As he disappeared into his room, my phone buzzed with another text from Vincent. The board would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. This is a priority, Mallory. I set my phone down without responding. Let him sweat. Marco came home early, his face tight with concern. I showed him the Chambers contract. This is incredible, he said, reading the terms. But it feels like they're using me to get back at Vincent? They absolutely are. He looked up. And you're okay with that? I considered the question. 9 years, Marco. 9 years of solving their hardest problems, of missing family dinners and weekend trips, 9 years of being told I was essential. And then I'm dismissed in 15 minutes by a man who couldn't be bothered to look me in the eye. Marco took my hand. You don't have to decide tonight. But I already had. That evening, after Marco and Elliot were asleep, I sent 2 emails. To Bernard Chambers, I accept your offer with one condition. I want a 3-year contract option following the initial project, not just 2 months. To Vincent Daltrey, I appreciate your follow-up. Unfortunately, I've accepted another opportunity. I wish Helios continued success. Vincent's response came within minutes. Mallory, please reconsider. The Chamber's contract is critical to our Q3 projections. We need your expertise. Name your price. I closed my laptop without responding. For the first time since that morning, I felt something other than devastation. Not quite satisfaction. Not quite vindication. Power. The next morning, I signed Bernard's revised contract with the 3-year option. By noon, my phone had 17 missed calls from Vincent and various Helios board members. I finally answered when Warren, my former mentor and CEO, called from his retirement. Mallory, his familiar voice was strained. Vincent told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Not your fault, Warren. It is, in a way. I recommended Vincent to the board. I thought his financial background would help take the company public. I never imagined he'd dismantle what we built. I softened. Warren had always been fair. Water under the bridge now. He told me about Chambers, Warren continued. You know this will devastate Helios's quarterly results. I'm aware. A long pause. You're going to take the offer, aren't you? I already have. Another pause. I can't blame you. But Mallory, there are 400 employees at Helios. Good people. If this contract falls through, Vincent should have thought of that before he started firing the people who make the company valuable. I interrupted, old anger flaring. You're right, Warren sighed. Just do what you need to do. But remember who gets hurt in corporate wars. Rarely the generals. His words stayed with me as I set up my new workspace in our spare bedroom. 400 employees. People like Imani with families and mortgages. People who had nothing to do with Vincent's decisions. Warren's words echoed in my head as I sat at my new desk later that day, staring at the Chamber's laptop. 400 employees. But then I remembered how none of them, except Imani, had even looked at me as I cleared out my things. How they'd all just kept their heads down, grateful it wasn't them. Would I really sacrifice my own future out of concern for people who couldn't spare me a goodbye? My phone buzzed with a text from Imani. Vincent's losing his mind. He called an all hands and basically admitted they have no idea how to complete the Chamber's proposal without you. What did you do? I didn't respond. I couldn't explain to her that I was now working for the very client she was desperately trying to impress. Instead, I immersed myself in the Chamber's project. Their security needs were complex, more complex than even Helios had realized. By evening, I'd outlined an architecture that made my previous work look primitive. This was the beauty of working directly for the client. No corporate filters, no budget constraints imposed by middle managers trying to pad their bonuses. Bernard wanted the best solution possible, and he was letting me create it. When Marco came home, he found me surrounded by digital diagrams and half-empty coffee mugs. You look happy, he said, studying my face. I looked up, surprised. I am. This is what I should have been doing all along. He sat on the edge of my desk. Vincent called the house line today. My stomach tightened. What did he want? To talk to you. I told him you were unavailable. He mentioned something about Helios filing an injunction. They can't, I said, more confidently than I felt. I've reviewed my contract repeatedly. I'm not violating any terms. Marco nodded slowly. Just be careful, Mal. Men like that don't lose gracefully. He was right about that. The next morning, I received a formal letter from Helios's legal department claiming I had misappropriated proprietary information and demanding I cease all work for competitors immediately. It was a bluff. I knew it, and they knew it. I forwarded it to Bernard, who responded within minutes. Our legal team will handle this. Please continue your excellent work. By day 3 of my Chamber's contract, I had completed what would have taken 2 weeks at Helios. No meetings, no politics, no justifying every decision to people who barely understood the technology. Just pure creation. Bernard called that afternoon. The preliminary designs are impressive, Mallory. I'd like you to present them to our executive team tomorrow. So soon? Time is of the essence. And there's something else. Vincent Daltrey has requested a meeting with me. My heart skipped. About what? He didn't specify, but I can guess. I thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, conflicted. Part of me wanted Vincent to beg Bernard for mercy. Another part felt uneasy about being the cause of Helios's potential downfall. That evening, Elliot came into my office while I was preparing my presentation. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." He fidgeted with the jade elephant he'd given me, which now sat on my new desk. "Are you getting revenge on your old company?" I froze. "What makes you ask that?" "I heard Dad on the phone. He told Uncle Raffi you were making them pay for what they did." "Kids hear everything." I gestured for him to sit. "It's complicated, buddy. Complicated like when Kyle H. pushed me at recess, and you told me that hurting him back wouldn't actually make me feel better? A 12-year-old throwing my own parenting back at me. Perfect." "This is different," I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Elliot shrugged. "Okay, but you always say we should be the people we want to see in the world." After he left, I couldn't focus on my presentation. When had my bright, thoughtful son become so perceptive? And why did his simple question make me feel so exposed? The next morning, I dressed carefully for my presentation at Chambers' charcoal suit. Minimal jewelry, hair pulled back, professional, commanding. I would show them exactly what Helios had thrown away. Bernard met me in the lobby of their gleaming headquarters. "Ready to impress some very important people?" "Absolutely." As we walked toward the conference room, I spotted a familiar figure through the glass walls, Vincent Daltrey, sitting alone at the table, checking his watch. I stopped cold. "You didn't mention he would be here." Bernard's expression gave nothing away. A last-minute development. Vincent requested to observe our meeting before his separate appointment with me. "This isn't what we agreed to." "No, it isn't," Bernard acknowledged. "But sometimes, Mallory, justice is best served with witnesses." Before I could protest further, he opened the door and ushered me in. 8 executives in expensive suits turned to look at us. Vincent's face paled when he saw me. "Ms. Vega will be presenting the security architecture she's developed for our new infrastructure," Bernard announced, as if this were completely normal. I stood frozen for a moment, anger and anxiety battling inside me. Then I looked directly at Vincent, at his shocked expression, his slightly disheveled appearance, the sweat beading above his upper lip. 9 years discarded in 15 minutes. I squared my shoulders and moved to the front of the room. "Good morning. I'm Mallory Vega, your security architecture consultant." For the next 40 minutes, I presented the most brilliant work of my career. I explained complex security protocols in terms the executives could understand. I outlined innovative approaches that would protect their data while maintaining system performance. I answered technical questions with clarity and confidence. Not once did I look at Vincent. When I finished, Bernard spoke. "Thank you, Mallory. This is exactly what we've been looking for." He turned to the executives. "I believe this confirms our decision to work with Ms. Vega directly rather than through a vendor." One of the executives, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, spoke up. "What about implementation? Designing is one thing, building is another." "An excellent question," Bernard nodded. "Mallory, in your professional opinion, which vendor would be best equipped to implement this architecture?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what was at stake. This was the moment Vincent had come for to salvage the Helios contract, even if he couldn't get me back. I could feel Vincent's desperate gaze. I thought about the 400 employees at Helios, about Warren's warning, about Elliot's question. "For implementation, I would recommend Lyra Systems," I said clearly. "Their development team has the specific expertise this architecture requires." "Not Helios, not Vincent's company." The woman nodded, satisfied. Vincent made a strangled sound. Bernard dismissed the executive team but asked Vincent and me to stay. When the room emptied, he closed the door. "Well, that was illuminating," he said, looking between us. "Vincent, you came here to convince me to award the contract to Helios despite losing your key architect. Mallory just demonstrated precisely why that would be a mistake." Vincent finally found his voice. "This is corporate sabotage. We'll sue both of you. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, incredulous laugh. For what? For firing me and then watching me succeed elsewhere? Good luck with that. You know this will devastate Helios, Vincent hissed. The board will have my head. Perhaps they should, Bernard said mildly. Firing the person most essential to winning a critical contract doesn't speak well of your judgment. Vincent's face flushed dark red. You orchestrated this. You poached her deliberately. I recognize talent you discarded, Bernard corrected. There's a difference. I watched this exchange with growing unease. The revenge felt good, seeing Vincent squirm, watching his career implode in real time. But something felt off about Bernard's role in all this. May I ask a question? I interrupted. Both men turned to me. Bernard, when exactly did you decide to hire me directly instead of working through a vendor? A fleeting expression crossed Bernard's face, caution perhaps. When I learned you were available. And how did you learn that so quickly? I was fired at 8:45 a.m. You emailed me at 11:23 a.m. the same day. Vincent looked between us, confusion replacing anger. Bernard smiled thinly. News travels fast in business circles. Or, I said carefully, you already knew it was going to happen. You knew Vincent was planning a restructure that would eliminate my position. The room went very still. That's absurd, Vincent sputtered. Why would I tell a potential client about internal reorganization plans? But something had changed in Bernard's expression. The benevolent mentor mask had slipped, revealing something colder. You didn't tell me directly, Bernard said to Vincent, but your CFO, Julian Carter, serves on the same nonprofit board as my wife. He mentioned at a function that Helios was undergoing significant personnel changes under your leadership. Specifically, that you were eliminating redundant technical positions to improve the balance sheet before an IPO push. My stomach sank, and you realized I would be a target. Bernard nodded. Given your salary level and specialized role, it seemed likely. I simply prepared for the possibility. I turned to Vincent. So this strategic realignment wasn't even your original idea. You were just following a standard MBA playbook to impress the board with cost-cutting before going public. Vincent had the decency to look ashamed. And you, I continued facing Bernard, saw an opportunity to get what you wanted at a discount. Cut out the vendor entirely, hire me directly for a fraction of what you would have paid Helios, and get the exact same expertise. Bernard spread his hands. Business is business, Mallory. We all made our choices here. The bitter taste of manipulation filled my mouth. I'd been so focused on Vincent's betrayal that I'd missed how Bernard was using me too. Different methods, same fundamental view, that I was a resource to be exploited, not a person with dignity. I gathered my presentation materials. I believe this meeting is over. Mallory, Bernard started. Don't be dramatic. Your contract is still intact, I finished for him, and I'll fulfill my obligations. But let's be clear about our relationship. I'm not your weapon against Vincent. I'm not your discounted solution. I'm a professional providing a service for agreed compensation. Nothing more. I walked out without looking back, my hands shaking but my spine straight. In the parking garage, Vincent caught up to me. Mallory, wait. I kept walking toward my car. Please, he said, his voice stripped of its usual corporate polish. I need that contract. Without it. I turned to face him. Without it, the board will fire you. Just like you fired me. He nodded miserably. Probably. How many others were on your cut list? How many more 9-year veterans were getting 15-minute dismissals this week? Vincent looked away. 17. The number hit me like a physical blow. 17 people. 17 lives disrupted so you could impress the board with your cost-cutting prowess. It wasn't personal. That's the problem, I said quietly. It should have been personal. We're people, Vincent, not line items. I got into my car and drove home in a daze. My triumphant moment turned to ashes. I wasn't a hero getting justice. I was just another pawn in a game between powerful men. At home, I found Marco and Elliot in the backyard. Marco teaching our son how to check the oil in the lawnmower. Simple, practical knowledge passed from father to son. Real value. How'd the big presentation go? Marco called. Complicated, I said. I'll tell you later. That night, after Elliot was asleep, I explained everything to Marco. The manipulation from both sides. The revelation that 17 people were slated for Vincent's chopping block. So what now? He asked when I finished. I stared at the ceiling. I don't know. I'm still legally obligated to Chambers. And honestly, the work itself is fascinating. But knowing how Bernard orchestrated this. Marco took my hand. What would make this right for you? Not what would hurt Vincent most or what would satisfy Bernard, but what would make you feel whole again? I considered his question for a long time. The people, I finally said, knowing that the 16 others won't lose their jobs the way I did. Then maybe that's your answer. The next morning, I called Imani. I need information. About time. Everyone's freaking out here. Vincent looked like a corpse when he came back from Chambers yesterday. I need to know who else is on the layoff list. A pause. How do you know about that? Vincent told me. 17 people total, including me. Jesus, she breathed. Let me check with HR. Layla owes me a favor. An hour later, she sent me a text with 16 names. Most I recognized, a few I didn't. All skilled specialists with institutional knowledge. All with salaries that would look good to eliminate on a pre-IPO balance sheet. I spent the day working on the Chambers project while forming a plan. That evening, I called Warren. Mallory, he answered, surprised. I heard about the Chambers meeting. Vincent is, well, desperate is putting it mildly. I'm not calling about Vincent, I said. I'm calling about Helios, the real Helios, the company we built. I'm listening. Vincent is planning to cut 16 more people by the end of the month. Specialists mostly. People with deep institutional knowledge. Warren sighed heavily. I suspected something like this when the board started pushing for an IPO timeline. Cut costs, boost short-term profits, raise the offering price. It will destroy the company in the long run. I know. His voice sounded tired. But I'm retired, Mallory. The board thanked me for my service and made it clear they wanted fresh perspectives. You're still the founder. You still have shares and connections. A long pause. What exactly are you suggesting? I outlined my idea. Not revenge, but reconstruction. A way to save what mattered about Helios while letting Vincent face the consequences of his own decisions. The next week passed in a blur of activity. By day, I worked diligently on the Chambers project, creating something I was genuinely proud of. By night, I worked on my plan with Warren and, surprisingly, Bernard Chambers. Convincing Bernard had been easier than expected. Vincent lied to me about Helios's capabilities without you, he'd said when I called him. I don't appreciate being misled. If your alternative offers better value and more stability, I'm interested. On a Friday afternoon, exactly 16 days after I'd been fired, Vincent Daltrey called an emergency all-hands meeting at Helios. Attendance was mandatory. I watched the live stream from my home office, Imani having sent me the link. Vincent stood at the front of the packed room, flanked by board members. His polished facade had cracked hair slightly disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. As you know, we've been pursuing an aggressive growth strategy in preparation for our IPO, he began. Unfortunately, recent developments have forced us to reconsider our timeline. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Chambers Technologies contract, which represented a significant portion of our projected Q3 revenue, will not be awarded to Helios. More murmurs, louder now. Furthermore, Vincent continued, his voice strained, the board has expressed concerns about our recent strategic decisions, particularly regarding personnel. The camera panned to Warren, who had requested reinstatement to the board the previous week, a right he'd maintained in his retirement agreement. In light of these challenges, Vincent said, the board has decided that a different leadership approach is needed at this critical juncture. Translation: Vincent was out. Warren stepped forward. Thank you, Vincent. As founder and newly reinstated executive chairman, I want to address the company. The relief in the room was palpable. Helios was built on innovation and expertise. Warren continued, our strength has always been our people. The board has unanimously decided to pause the IPO preparations and refocus on our core capabilities. He outlined a new direction, or rather, a return to the old one, prioritizing expertise over cost-cutting, innovation over short-term financials, and then came the part I'd been waiting for. I'm also pleased to announce a new strategic partnership with Nova Technical Solutions, a specialized consultancy that will work alongside Helios to deliver the Chambers Technologies project and other key initiatives. The camera showed confused faces around the room. No one had heard of Nova Technical Solutions, because it hadn't existed until 3 days ago, when I'd officially registered it with the 16 other specialists from Vincent's cut list as founding partners. Warren explained how Nova, my new company, would collaborate with Helios on the Chambers project, how we would bring our specialized expertise without the overhead of traditional employment, how this model protected both Helios and its specialized talent from future strategic realignments. I watched Imani's face on the live stream as understanding dawned. Her eyes widened, and she began typing furiously on her phone. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. "You brilliant, magnificent bitch." I smiled. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. Vincent was being pushed out, yes, but more importantly, 16 careers were being saved. The company Warren and I had helped build would continue with its soul intact, and I was creating something new, a home for specialists who wanted to do great work without corporate politics. The following Monday, I walked into Chambers Technologies for my regular meeting with Bernard, but this time with Warren beside me. We'd negotiated a new agreement. Nova would design the security architecture, Helios would implement it, and Chambers would get the best of both worlds. As we left the meeting, Warren squeezed my shoulder. "You could have burned it all down, you know. After what Vincent did, no one would have blamed you." I thought about Elliot's question, about being the person I wanted to see in the world. "Revenge would have felt good for a day," I said. "This feels right for years." 6 months later, Nova Technical Solutions has 17 employees, all specialists who are undervalued elsewhere. We work with companies who understand that expertise isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Helios is thriving under new leadership. Vincent, I heard, is consulting while searching for his next CEO role. As for me, I work from home 3 days a week. I make it to Elliot's soccer games. Marco and I had our first vacation in 5 years. And most importantly, I'm valued for exactly who I am, a woman who solves the problems no one else can solve. So that's my story. Have you ever faced a situation where revenge was tempting but you found a better way? Or maybe you chose revenge and don't regret it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if you're watching this while feeling undervalued at your own job, remember, your worth isn't determined by people who can't see your value. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about building something better. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm working on something new about corporate culture and would love to share it with you all soon. Because in the end, strategic realignment isn't just corporate jargon. Sometimes, it's exactly what we need to do with our lives when someone shows us who they really are. "You'll take the stairs," Vernon said, tapping his polished watch. The morning staff meeting had just ended, and I stood alone with him and 4 other team leaders near the elevator bank. Elevator access is restricted during the CEO summit. Security protocol. My arms were full of presentation boards for the executive lunch. The same lunch I'd spent 3 nights preparing but wouldn't be attending. "The materials need to be on 65 in 15 minutes, I replied, glancing at the elevator where the others waited. Vernon's thin lips curved upward. "Then I suggest you start climbing, Rook. Not Rookie. Not my actual name, Rookmini. Just Rook, like the chess piece. Expendable. Limited in movement." "I've got 30 pounds of presentation materials," I said. He shrugged. "Should have thought about that before spending company money on foam boards instead of doing digital presentations like everyone else." The boards were his explicit request. I had the email to prove it. "Maybe one of us could help carry," Lena started, but Vernon cut her off. "Everyone's needed at the summit. Rook can handle it." He turned to me. "Consider it exercise. You need to fill the gap while we attend the executive lunch." Damon snickered. Eden and Parker exchanged glances. Lena studied her shoes. The steel elevator doors parted. They stepped inside. 65 floors, Vernon called as the doors closed. "Better hurry." I stood frozen. clutching the presentation boards, hearing something crack inside me. Not my resolve. Something else. Something that had been bending for 5 years. The stairwell door felt impossibly heavy. Inside, concrete steps spiraled upward, emergency lights casting everything in sickly yellow. I set down the boards and pulled out my phone. "Artie, it's happening," I said to my lawyer. "Make the call." "Are you certain?" His voice echoed in the empty stairwell. "Once we move, there's no—" "I'm certain. Execute as planned." I tucked my phone away, picked up the boards, and began climbing. By the 3rd floor, my calves burned. By the 7th, my breathing grew labored. At floor 12, I set everything down and peeled off my jacket. 23 minutes later, I pushed through the door to floor 30. Halfway there, sweat plastered my blouse to my back. My fingers were raw from gripping the boards. I remembered my first day at Zencor Technologies 5 years ago. Fresh from college, portfolio bulging with ideas, heart full of ambition. "Your designs have potential," Vernon had said during my interview. "Rough, unpolished, but we can work with that." For 3 years, I'd worked overtime, weekends, holidays, designs that won company awards, with Vernon's name attached. Campaigns that doubled client retention, credit given to Damon or Eden. My ideas, voiced in meetings, ignored until repeated by Parker, minutes later. Floor 42. My legs trembled. The maintenance manager passed me, concern etching his weathered face. "Rukmini, why are you in the stairwell? There's a fire safety inspection scheduled." Following orders, I managed between breaths. He shook his head. "Let me help you with those." "I've got it, Hector, but thank you. Suit yourself, but you shouldn't be here today of all days." If only he knew I'd signed his paycheck since Tuesday. Floor 57. My phone buzzed. "Artie, it's done," he said. "Documents delivered. The board is reviewing them now." I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Any pushback? None. Property transfer appear legitimate because it is, and they're stunned, of course. 8 more floors. I forced myself upward, each step a testament to 5 years of swallowed pride, of team dinners where I drank water while they ordered bottles of wine, of watching colleagues who spoke up disappear overnight. 5 years of living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old car while funneling every dollar of my inheritance into anonymous shell companies that slowly, methodically purchased shares of the building that housed Zencor Technologies. Floor 65. I pushed through the final door. Presentation boards clutched against my chest. The receptionist jumped to her feet. "You can't go in there," she stammered. "The board is in emergency session." Through the glass walls, I saw them. Vernon, Damon, Eden, Parker, Lena, seated around the conference table with the executive team. The CEO stood at the head, holding papers, his face ashen. I walked past the receptionist, through the double doors, into stunned silence. "What are you doing here?" Vernon hissed. "I told you to take the stairs," I finished, setting down the boards. "So I did. 65 floors." The CEO cleared his throat. "Miss Kapoor, perhaps you could wait outside. We're dealing with an urgent matter." "The building sale," I said, "and the eviction notice." Vernon's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" I stepped forward, extending my hand to the CEO. "The papers, please." Confusion flickered across his face, but he handed them over. I scanned the document, the eviction notice I'd instructed Artie to deliver that morning. 5 years of planning, of saving, of secretly acquiring the building through a dozen different investment vehicles, all culminating in this moment. I looked up at their bewildered faces. "The elevator wasn't restricted today," I said. "I checked with maintenance on my way up." Vernon's face reddened. "This is inappropriate. Get out before I call security." "That would be interesting," I replied, "since they work for me now." The room went still. I set the eviction notice on the table, smoothing its corners. 2 years ago, I suggested we buy this building instead of renting. You said I should stick to arranging lunch orders and leave real business to the adults. I turned to the CEO. "You asked who purchased the building. The answer is Kapoor Holdings." I paused. "My company." Vernon laughed, a brittle sound. "That's impossible. You can barely afford your bus pass. You assumed that because I let you. The modest clothes, the packed lunches, the ancient car, all carefully cultivated. Meanwhile, my inheritance was working for me, buying this building piece by piece while you were buying designer watches. If you're listening to this story and feeling that rush of satisfaction, that tingle of finally justice is coming, take a second to tap that like button. Follow this channel for more stories of long-awaited reckonings. I promise, What happens next will leave you speechless. Drop a comment with what you think Vernon deserves. I'm Rukmini Kapoor, first-generation American, daughter of immigrants who taught me patience and perseverance. Graduate of State College, not an Ivy League. Always the hardest worker in the room, never the most recognized. For 5 years, I watched Vernon and his inner circle take credit for my work. My redesign of the client portal, presented as Damon's brainchild, my marketing strategy that increased revenue by 40%, suddenly, Eden's brilliant insight. My suggestions in meetings, dismissed, until Parker repeated them minutes later. This is absurd, Vernon spluttered. She's delusional. The CEO held up a hand. The paperwork appears legitimate. Copper Holdings completed the purchase yesterday. Vernon's face drained of color. There must be some mistake. No mistake, I said. The building is mine, and Zencor Technologies has 30 days to vacate. Lena stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Rukmini, can we talk about this? Maybe reach an understanding? Lena, who had watched in silence for 5 years, who knew what was happening but never intervened, who once whispered, "I'm sorry," after a particularly brutal meeting but did nothing to help. You have 30 days, I repeated. I suggest you start packing. The CEO cleared his throat. Perhaps we could negotiate a lease. The space has already been promised to new tenants. A lie, but they didn't know that. Vernon surged to his feet. You ungrateful little... Choose your next words carefully, I interrupted. They might be the last you speak as an employee of Zencor. The room erupted in voices, protests, questions, threats. I remained standing, silent, watching their comfortable world crumble around them. Security arrived, the same team that now reported to me. The CEO raised his hands, calling for calm. Everyone, please. Let's take a breath. He turned to me. Miss Cupper, surely we can come to some arrangement. Zencor has been in this building for 15 years. 14 years and 7 months, I corrected. I've documented every day. Vernon's eyes burned with hatred. You planned this. All this time, pretending to be a team player. I was a team player. You just didn't value my team. I walked to the window, looking out over the city. Do you know what it's like, Vernon, to have your work stolen day after day? To watch others advance on your ideas while you stay behind? That's business, he spat. If you can't handle it, I handled it perfectly, I said, turning back to face them. I played the long game while you focused on quarterly bonuses. The CEO stepped between us. What do you want, Miss Kapoor? What did I want? Revenge, yes. But something else too. Something that had been forming in my mind as I climbed those 65 floors. Step by painful step. I want... The conference room doors burst open. A security guard entered, his expression grim. Miss Kapoor, there's a situation downstairs. The fire safety inspector found critical violations. He's threatening to shut down the building immediately. Vernon smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Not even owner for a day and already failing. I felt the weight of all eyes on me. This wasn't part of the plan. The building inspection wasn't supposed to happen until next week. Had I miscalculated? Would my moment of triumph collapse before it had truly begun? The CEO looked at me with newfound doubt. Vernon's smile widened. The others exchanged glances, sensing a shift in power. The inspector insists on speaking with the building owner immediately, the guard continued. He says it's urgent. I straightened my sweat-soaked blouse, acutely aware of my disheveled appearance after climbing 65 floors. Against their polished exteriors, I looked exactly as they'd always seen me, struggling, inadequate, out of place. Tell him I'll be right down, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. As I moved toward the door, Vernon stepped into my path. Looks like your little power play just crashed and burned, he whispered. Amateur, I met his gaze. We'll see who's still standing when this is over. The security guard held the door as I walked out, leaving behind a room of executives wondering if they'd witnessed my greatest triumph or most spectacular failure. And I wondered the same thing myself. The elevator ride down felt like descending into uncertainty. Just minutes ago, I'd revealed myself as the new owner, watching shock ripple across faces that had dismissed me for years. Now, one unexpected inspection threatened everything. Hector waited in the lobby with a man in a navy uniform holding a clipboard. Miss Kapoor, Hector said, relief evident in his voice. This is Inspector Neil. He's found several issues during today's fire safety check. Neil frowned, tapping his clipboard. The sprinkler system on floors 30 through 42 isn't up to code, and 3 emergency exits are blocked with storage items. I can't allow normal operations until these are addressed. My heart sank. The building's previous management company had assured me all systems were compliant. Another lie. How quickly can we resolve this? I asked. The blocked exits can be cleared immediately. The sprinkler system will take at least 3 days of work. 3 days. 3 days of business disruption just as I was establishing authority. We can't shut down, I said. There are 12 companies operating in this building. Neil's expression hardened. Then I suggest you start evacuation procedures. The elevator dinged behind me. Vernon and the CEO emerged, both wearing carefully constructed expressions of concern that didn't quite hide their satisfaction at my predicament. Problem? Vernon asked innocently. I turned to Hector. Get a crew to clear those exits immediately. Then call Ajax Fire Systems. Tell them we need emergency service, whatever the cost. Hector nodded and hurried away. Inspector, I said, if we clear the exits and post fire wardens on the affected floors until repairs begin tomorrow morning, would that satisfy immediate safety requirements? Neil considered this. I'd need to see the exits cleared personally, and you'd need 1 warden per floor, with hourly fire watch rounds documented. Done, I said. Vernon stepped forward. This seems like an extensive building management issue. Perhaps Zencor should reconsider its eviction given these circumstances. The CEO nodded. We could delay our departure, help manage this transition. For a reasonable accommodation on rent, of course. Their transparent attempt to leverage my crisis made something harden inside me. 5 years of watching them take advantage of every weakness, every vulnerability. Not this time. Your offer is noted, I replied coolly. Inspector Neil, please give me 30 minutes to arrange the fire wardens and begin clearing the exits. As Neil stepped away to make a call, Vernon moved closer. Buying a building doesn't make you capable of running it, he murmured. You're already failing. Imagine how this looks to your new tenants. I met his gaze. I climbed 65 floors today because you thought it would break me. What makes you think this will? I climbed. His smile never reached his eyes. Because climbing stairs just requires stubborn stupidity. This requires actual business acumen. The CEO cleared his throat. We're simply offering assistance during a difficult transition. While attempting to negotiate under duress, I replied. Not exactly the ethical leadership Zencor claims in its mission statement. Before either could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Artie. Don't panic. I'm 5 minutes away with help. Hope flickered. Artie had never let me down. I turned back to Inspector Neil. I need to coordinate the fire wardens. Excuse me. For the next 20 minutes, I moved through the building with purpose, instructing security to clear the blocked exits, contacting office managers on the affected floors. My clothes still clung to me with sweat from the 65-floor climb, but I projected calm authority. When Artie arrived, he wasn't alone. With him was a woman in a tailored suit, carrying a tablet. Rukmini, this is Tara Mendez, former fire marshal, now private safety consultant. Tara nodded briskly. Artie explained the situation. Let me see the inspection report. After reviewing Neil's findings, she tapped rapidly on her tablet. These issues are real, but there's an alternative compliance pathway under City Code 5.7b that allows for a 72-hour remediation period with enhanced monitoring. I've worked with Neil before. Let me talk to him. 20 minutes later, we had a solution. The exits were being cleared, fire wardens assigned, and Ajax Fire Systems would begin work at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The building could remain operational. Neil signed off on the revised compliance plan. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon to check progress. As he left, I turned to find Vernon, watching from across the lobby. His expression unreadable. Looks like you found a temporary band-aid, he said. But running a building is different from making pretty presentations. This is just the beginning of your problems. Perhaps, I agreed, but I've always been good at solving problems, especially those created by others. His eyes narrowed. The board meeting resumes in 30 minutes. Your little stunt interrupted important business. My ownership of this building is not a stunt. We'll see. He checked his watch. 30 minutes. Unless you need more time to clean up. You look disheveled. After he walked away, Artie touched my arm. You okay? I nodded. I need to change before I go back up there. You have clothes here? Emergency bag in my desk. I've learned to be prepared. 10 minutes later, I emerged from the bathroom in fresh clothes, my hair smoothed back, face washed, the climb's evidence erased, except for the ache in my muscles. Artie waited outside. You don't have to go back up there today. We've made our point. If I don't return, they'll see it as weakness, I said. Besides, there's more to do. The revenge part, he said quietly. I gave him a sharp look. The business part. Rukmini, I've known you since college. This isn't just business. It started as business, I corrected. An investment opportunity they were too arrogant to see. And now? I thought about Vernon's smug face when he ordered me to climb 65 floors. About 5 years of stolen ideas and credit given to others. About watching qualified people pushed out because they challenged the comfortable hierarchy. Now it's justice. When I re-entered the conference room on floor 65, conversations halted. The executive team had reassembled, papers spread across the table. Vernon sat at the CEO's right hand, whispering something that made the older man frown. Miss Kapoor, the CEO said formally, I understand you've resolved the inspection issue. For now, Vernon added. I took the empty chair at the far end of the table. Yes, work begins tomorrow morning. Good, the CEO said. Now, regarding our situation, our legal team has reviewed the ownership documents. The transfer appears legitimate. It is legitimate, I stated. Nevertheless, we believe there's room for negotiation. Zencor has been the anchor tenant in this building for nearly 15 years. Our sudden eviction would cause significant disruption. I looked around the table at the faces watching me, some curious, some hostile, some calculating. For 5 years, I'd sat in meetings like this, offering ideas that were ignored or stolen. Today, they waited for my response. Significant disruption, I repeated, like being told to climb 65 floors with presentation materials because the elevator is restricted when it isn't. Vernon stiffened. The CEO looked confused. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said. Ask your team leaders, I suggested. Ask them how they treat those beneath them in the hierarchy. Eden shifted uncomfortably. Parker studied his hands. Damon's jaw tightened. Miss Kapoor, the CEO continued. Whatever personal grievances you may have, this isn't personal, I interrupted. It's structural. The way Zencor operates, taking credit from those below, promoting based on relationships rather than results, creating a culture of fear rather than innovation. These are business problems that have created business consequences. And those consequences include you buying our building to evict us? The CEO's voice hardened. That seems rather personal. I bought this building because it was undervalued. The previous owners neglected necessary updates, leading to today's inspection issues. They were willing to sell at below market rate to avoid the coming maintenance costs. I leaned forward. I saw value where others saw only problems. Isn't that what good business people do? Vernon snorted. You saw an opportunity for revenge. Vernon, the CEO warned. No, let's be honest here, Vernon continued. She's been planning this for years. Waiting, watching, looking for weakness. That's not business. That's obsession. I smiled. If recognizing an undervalued asset and having the patience to acquire it properly is obsession, then yes, I'm guilty. The CEO sighed. Regardless of motivation, we're here now. What would it take for Zencor to remain in the building? This was the moment I'd rehearsed countless times in my mind during those 5 years. The moment of leverage, of power. What did I want? Revenge, certainly, but something else too. I'm willing to offer Zencor a new lease agreement, I said. Hope flickered across their faces. With conditions, I added. The CEO nodded cautiously. Which are? First, a complete reorganization of leadership. I looked directly at Vernon. Some people will need to leave. Vernon's face flushed. This is outrageous. Second, a review of all promotions and project attributions for the past 5 years, with appropriate corrections and compensations. Eden paled. Damon's knuckles whitened around his pen. Third, implementation of new policies that protect intellectual property and ensure proper credit. The CEO frowned. You're asking for unprecedented influence over our internal operations. I'm offering conditions for a new lease. You're free to relocate. In 30 days? Impossible. We'd lose millions. I shrugged. Business involves risk. Vernon slammed his hand on the table. This is blackmail. This is negotiation, I corrected. Something you taught me, Vernon. Always negotiate from a position of strength. Isn't that what you told the team? Right before you took my client presentation and put your name on it? The room went silent. The CEO looked between us. Is that true, Vernon? Before he could answer, the conference room door opened. A woman in an expensive suit entered, followed by 2 men carrying bankers' boxes. I apologize for the interruption, she said smoothly. I'm Diana Reynolds, from Sterling Partners. The CEO stood. Diana, we weren't expecting you until next week. She smiled tightly. Events have accelerated our timeline. May I speak with you privately? As they stepped outside, Vernon leaned toward me. What have you done? I raised an eyebrow. I don't know what you mean. Sterling Partners is evaluating us for acquisition. You knew that, did I? His eyes widened with realization. You told them about the building situation. The door reopened. The CEO returned, his face ashen. Diana remained in the doorway, watching. Sterling Partners is pausing acquisition talks, he announced. They have concerns about our stability given the real estate situation. All eyes turned to me. Vernon's voice was barely controlled. You just cost this company millions in valuation. All for what? Because you had to climb some stairs? Because you didn't get enough gold stars? I stood slowly, feeling the ache in my legs from those 65 floors. No, Vernon. Because you and others like you built a company culture that rewards the wrong things, that steals rather than creates, that climbs by pushing others down. I walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I didn't just buy a building. I bought time to decide what happens next. The room behind me erupted in urgent whispers. Through the glass reflection, I watched the CEO pull Vernon aside, their conversation intense and pointed. This wasn't over, not even close. The real revenge was just beginning to take shape, transforming from a 5-year dream into concrete reality. And as I turned back to face them, I saw something I'd waited years to see: fear in Vernon's eyes. The next morning, I arrived at 7 a.m., watching Ajax Fire Systems technicians install the upgraded sprinklers. My muscles still burned from yesterday's climb, each step a reminder of Vernon's casual cruelty, but also of my triumph. Everything on schedule? I asked Hector. Yes, Miss Kapoor. The work should be completed by tomorrow evening. He hesitated. The Zencor team has been asking questions. They're nervous. Let them be, I said, checking my watch. Their all-hands meeting starts in an hour. After the chaos of yesterday's revelations, the CEO had called a company-wide meeting to address rumors spreading through Zencor. I hadn't been invited, of course, but I didn't need an invitation to attend events in my own building. At 7:55, I stood in the service corridor outside Zencor's main conference space, listening to the murmur of hundreds of employees. A text from my source inside confirmed the executive team had arrived. I straightened my blazer, took a deep breath, and pushed through the door. The room fell silent as I walked toward the stage where the CEO stood at the podium. Vernon and the other team leaders sat in a row behind him, their expressions ranging from surprise to outright hostility. Miss Kapoor, the CEO said, recovering quickly. This is a private company meeting. I'm aware, I replied, my voice carrying through the silent room. But since you're discussing the future of your tenancy in my building, I thought I should participate. Whispers erupted across the room. Many employees were hearing confirmation of the rumors for the first time. That's not necessary, the CEO said firmly. We'll continue our discussions through proper channels. Like the proper channels Vernon used yesterday when he forced me to climb 65 floors with presentation materials? By lying about elevator restrictions? More whispers. Vernon leaned forward, whispering urgently to the CEO, who frowned. That's an internal matter, the CEO replied. Is it? I stepped closer to the podium. Because it happened in my building, using my stairwells, which violates safety protocols during a fire system inspection. Inspector Neal was quite concerned when I told him. Vernon stood abruptly. This is inappropriate. Security won't be removing me, I finished. They report to building management now. For 5 years, I'd watched Zencor's leadership manipulate information, control narratives, silence dissent. Today, I was changing that dynamic. I turned to face the employees. Many of you don't know me. I've worked at Zencor for 5 years in the design department. Yesterday, I revealed that I own this building and have issued an eviction notice to the company. The room erupted with voices. The CEO raised his hands. Everyone, please. We're handling this situation. Are you? I asked. Because your employees deserve to know that Sterling Partners has paused acquisition talks, that your leadership team is scrambling to find new office space, that jobs may be at risk. That's enough, Vernon shouted, moving toward me. I stood my ground. The truth is uncomfortable, isn't it, Vernon? Especially when you can't control it. The CEO stepped between us. Miss Kapoor, I understand you have grievances, but this approach isn't productive. I disagree. For 5 years, I've watched talented people leave this company because their work was stolen, their contributions minimized, their growth stunted by leaders who care more about protecting their positions than building something valuable. I gestured toward the audience. How many of you have had your ideas dismissed in meetings, only to see them presented by someone else later? How many have watched credit for your work go to others? How many have stayed silent because speaking up meant risking your job? Uncomfortable glances spread through the crowd. A few hands tentatively raised. This isn't just about me, I continued. It's about a system that rewards the wrong behaviors, that punishes innovation unless it comes from the right people. Vernon pushed past the CEO. You're just bitter because you couldn't cut it, because you weren't good enough. A voice called from the audience. That's not true. We all turned. Nisha from accounting stood, her hands shaking but her voice steady. Rukmini redesigned our entire client portal last year. I sat next to her while she worked on it for months. Then suddenly, it was presented as Damon's project. Another person stood, then another. Stories poured out, projects reassigned, credits stolen, bullying disguised as feedback. The CEO's face darkened as he glanced between the speakers and his leadership team. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing the reality beneath the polished presentations. Vernon's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is a coordinated attack. She's manipulating you all. Like you manipulated performance reviews? Someone called out. Like you manipulated client relationships? The room was slipping beyond the executive's control. The CEO stepped to the podium, voice firm. That's enough. This meeting is suspended. Everyone, please return to your departments. We'll address these concerns appropriately. As people reluctantly began filing out, he turned to me. I hope you're satisfied with the disruption you've caused. I didn't cause this disruption, I replied. I just removed the fear that kept it hidden. He gestured to a side door. My office, now. In the CEO's corner office, Vernon paced like a caged animal while Eden, Damon, Parker, and Lena sat stiffly on the sofa. The CEO took his seat behind the desk, motioning for me to sit opposite him. What do you want, Miss Kapoor? Really want? Beyond humiliating my leadership team, I met his gaze directly. I want change. By destroying what we've built? By fixing what's broken? Vernon stopped pacing. This is ridiculous. She's not a stakeholder in our company. She has no right to demand anything except rent, if we decide to stay. The CEO raised a hand to silence him. Let's be practical. Finding suitable space for 300 employees in 30 days is nearly impossible. The disruption would be devastating to our operations and client relationships. I'm aware, I said. Then perhaps we can reach an agreement that serves both our interests. I nodded. I'm listening. We need time. A 6-month extension, at minimum. In return, we're willing to pay a premium on the current lease rate. Money isn't the issue, I replied. Then what is? I looked around at the faces watching me, the people who had dismissed and underestimated me for years, who had seen me as nothing but a convenient stepping stone. Accountability, I said simply. Vernon snorted. Here we go again, with the revenge fantasy. No fantasy, I corrected. Reality. I have a proposal. I removed a folder from my bag and placed it on the desk. Inside is a new lease agreement. 6 months, as you requested, with an option to extend if certain conditions are met. The CEO opened the folder, scanning the document. His eyebrows rose. These conditions are extensive. They're necessary. He continued reading, his expression growing increasingly troubled. You want Vernon and Damon removed from the company? A complete audit of all projects for the past 5 years? Implementation of new attribution and promotion policies? This is unprecedented interference. Think of it as corrective action, I suggested. The price of poor management. Vernon lurched forward. This is blackmail. No, I replied calmly. This is consequence. The CEO set down the document. Even if I wanted to accept these terms, the board would never approve such interference. They might if they understood the alternative. I reached for my phone, pulling up an email. This morning, I received an inquiry from your largest competitor, Prism Digital. They're very interested in leasing this space should Zencor vacate. I watched comprehension dawn on their faces. You wouldn't, Eden whispered. Business involves difficult decisions, I replied, echoing the phrase Vernon had used countless times when cutting corners or dismissing concerns. The CEO studied me carefully. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had 5 years to plan. Vernon slammed his hand on the desk. This is insane. We can't let her dictate who works here. Actually, the CEO said slowly, we might have to. What? The board meeting yesterday wasn't just about the building situation. It was also about the Sterling acquisition falling through, about our declining innovation metrics. about the troubling pattern of talent leaving for competitors. He looked at Vernon. They were already asking questions about leadership. Vernon's face paled. Richard, you can't be serious. After everything I've done for this company, what have you done exactly? The CEO, Richard, asked. Because based on what I heard downstairs, I'm beginning to wonder how much credit you've taken for others' work. For the first time, Vernon seemed at a loss for words. Richard turned back to me. I'll need to review these conditions thoroughly with legal. Some may need adjustment. I'm open to reasonable discussion, I said. But the core requirements are non-negotiable. He nodded slowly. I understand. As I stood to leave, Vernon stepped into my path. You think you've won, don't you? That this little power play fixes everything? No, I replied. I think this is just the beginning of fixing a broken system, one that you helped break. You have no idea what it takes to build something like Zencor. The sacrifices, the hard decisions. I know exactly what it takes, I said quietly. I've watched for 5 years. I've contributed for 5 years. I've learned for 5 years. Mostly how not to lead. His eyes narrowed. You'll fail. People like you always do. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But I'll fail on my own terms, not because someone pushed me down to climb higher. 3 days later, I stood in my new office on the 65th floor, watching the city awaken below. My phone buzzed with a text from Artie. Board approved the revised agreement. Vernon and Damon out. Full audit proceeding. New policies being drafted. Congratulations. I set the phone down, emotions swirling. This wasn't just revenge. It was restoration. A rebalancing of scales too long tipped against people like me. Those with ideas but without connections. Those with talent but without pedigree. Those who work twice as hard for half the recognition. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Hector entered with a maintenance update, followed by Tara with the completed fire inspection report. The building passed inspection, Tara announced. All systems now exceed code requirements. And the elevator maintenance is complete, Hector added. All 65 floors operating perfectly. I smiled. Thank you both. After they left, I turned back to the window. In the reflection, I could see the empty desk behind me, the office that had once belonged to Vernon. Tomorrow, I would meet with Zencor's remaining leadership to begin implementing the changes required by our agreement. Next week, I would review applications for the new Chief Ethics Officer position I'd insisted they create. And in the coming months, I would watch as a toxic culture slowly transformed into something better. Not perfect, but better. All because I'd climbed 65 floors when ordered to. All because they never imagined I owned the building they treated so carelessly. All because they underestimated what I was capable of. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, feeling the solidity of what I'd built. Not just ownership of a building, but a foundation for change, for myself and for others. Revenge wasn't just about making Vernon and others like him suffer consequences. It was about creating space for something new to grow in the aftermath. And as I turned from the window to begin my day's work, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years at Zencor. Possibility. Unlimited. Soaring possibility. Not because I'd climbed to the top, but because I'd changed what happened once I got there. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or overlooked, tap that like button. Subscribe for more stories about moments when everything changes in an instant. I'd love to hear in the comments about a time when you discovered your own power in an unexpected way. Remember, sometimes the longest climbs lead to the most breathtaking views. And sometimes, those who force you to take the stairs have no idea you own the building.